Alright, let's make something clear. I don't want any overdramatic crap getting in the way of this video. Alright? No training montages, no fight scenes, no preachy monologues, no pretending to destroy game boxes, none of that! And you're probably looking at the timeline right now and thinking, you can't possibly talk for that long about this game. Au contraire. I'm going to go into rather minute details at times, because beyond this video, I don't want to talk about this game again. So, that being said, welcome to the final part of the Bloody Roar Retrospective. Bloody Roar 4. It's November of 2003, and Bloody Roar 4 is about to release in North America. I was following the game up to its release date, and I can pinpoint the exact moment that I thought something might have gone wrong. I wasn't just reading reviews of the game. No, I was hunting for positive reviews of Bloody Roar 4, of which I could only find one at the time. Fast forward a decade or so, and the game sits at a solid 59 out of 100 on Metacritic.
That's positive thinking.
I forgot about the game until years later when I joined a fan forum called Bloody Roar X-Up and asked what went wrong with 4. Responses were, negative to say the least. Before that though, Hudson Soft established its own US branch for publishing, Hudson Entertainment. This was preceded by Hudson Soft USA, which shut down way back in 1995. Hudson Entertainment was established the same year Bloody Roar 4 first released. As such, Hudson couldn't use it to publish the game for the West and had to do it with the main Japanese office while aiding handled development. Konami meanwhile mostly just handled things like public relations and marketing. Which meant after the game came out, Konami could basically throw up their hands and say, hey, can't blame us for this, we didn't make it. As far as promotion goes, there wasn't a whole lot in the West to speak of, aside from some banner ads on GameFAQs that were kind of Matrix styled and had Zeon featured on them. Possibly the worst character aside from Bakuryu to help the uninitiated understand what a zoanthrope is. Meanwhile in Japan, a slightly different approach was taken. Japanese model and singer Yuko Ogura was brought in to shoot some promotional material. What kind of promotional material? The kind I'm embarrassed to own. Yep, trading cards and posters of Ogura in leopard print lingerie wearing cat ears and a tail. The posters I guess could work as promotional material, but considering that the cards were something packaged with the soundtrack and presumably new copies of the game, that's not really helping get the word out. This is the kind of advertising that pisses me off, because it comes off as having nothing worthwhile in the game to promote. Honestly, if the words Bloody Roar 4 weren't here, would you even know it was promoting a game? And even if you're into this sort of thing, or Yuko Ogura specifically, would you care enough to look up what Bloody Roar 4 is? Even worse, or better I guess, depending on who you are, the cards were used as part of some contest to have a meet and greet with Yuko Ogura. This seems like such a waste of time and resources in a vain attempt to get some visibility for the game in Japan, considering the focus of all this was on Yuko Ogura, and Bloody Roar 4 seems like it's just photobombing her to try and get some attention. Meanwhile, in the Americas, the region in which it was released first, here's a list of games that released within 1 month of Bloody Roar 4. Mega Man X7, Jak 2, Time Crisis 3, Castlevania Lament of Innocence, Tony Hawk's Underground, Dynasty Warriors 4 Extreme Legends, and Max Payne 2. Now here's a list of games that released within a week of Bloody Roar 4. Prince of Persia The Sands of Time, Need for Speed Underground, 13, Manhunt, Metal Arms Glitch in the System, Monster Rancher 4, and Final Fantasy X2. Now, here's a list of games that released on the same day as Bloody Roar 4. Ratchet & Clank Going Commando, Medal of Honor, Rising Sun, Legacy of Kain Defiance, Crash Nitro Kart, and finally, Beyond Good and Evil. And that's just looking at PS2 and multi-platform releases. Mario Kart Double Dash came out on the GameCube 4 days before BR4, and the Grand Theft Auto Double Pack, containing GTA 3 and Vice City, came out a couple weeks earlier on Xbox. You know, I hate to go back to the Yuko Ogura thing again, but leopard print? If you were going to go this route, why not use the female character from the game that turns into a leopard? or one of the other female characters. It would still be shameful, but at least it would be far more relevant promotion of the game. There were also magazine inserts like this one, which most prominently featured new character and possible Red Lobster mascot Nagi, and swapped out "Fight like an animal" for the much more ambiguous and less catchy slogan, "Let the transformation begin."
Transform and roll out!
It also goes on to say, among other things, that the game is built on a new 3D combat system.
As we'll see later, the word new doesn't apply to a whole lot in this game, including the combat system.
And finally, there's the official press release, which, like any good press release, is full of half-truths. It mentions Bloody Roar 4 having 10 distinct stages,
Only about half of which you've already seen in one form or another in previous Bloody Roar games,
having 8 gameplay modes,
assuming that you count training mode and combat, which I don't count watching two computer players fight each other as gameplay.
having more than 18 fighters,
Actually, it's only 16 fighters. You see, they counted Ryoho and Dragon Ryoho as two different people, and they also counted Ryoho and Mana as separate characters, even though they're always fighting together.
and, perhaps worst of all, openly labels itself as a button masher.
Something you probably shouldn't do when one of your series' biggest criticisms is that it's a button masher.
The press release ends by announcing Bloody Roar 4's suggested retail price of $39.99? That's $10 to $20 lower than what most PS2 games cost at the time. Although, when released in Japan, it did cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $50 to $60 US.
Maybe they cut costs by recycling a bunch of old assets and then didn't spend much time or money on other aspects of production. I'm just spitballing here, you know.
Speaking of spitballing, the story behind Bloody Roar 4 is a bit odd and scattershot. It even includes a short prologue of sorts leading into the story focusing on Gaia and the unborn. Throughout time, life forms on this planet have continued to evolve and prosper, but it is also true that there are many life forms that have become extinct, unable to evolve.
Throughout time, there have been things that are and things that aren't. But it is also true that things that were aren't now, unable to be, unlike the things that are and will be.
How exactly is this decided? Is there something on this planet that has the power to influence the future of these life forms? Mankind thought of Earth as a single giant life form, able, through its self-balancing nature, to preserve an ideal natural environment for the life upon it. This life form was named Gaia.
Who wrote this? You know what, that's a rhetorical question, because the Bloody Roar games typically don't list any sort of writers or narrative designers or things like that. I'm not even sure how to approach this, because the idea of a self-balancing nature preserving a livable environment isn't Gaia, it's Gaia hypothesis, which is more about the relationship between life and its inorganic surroundings, not some overarching deity. But I gotta say, why are they introducing pseudo-spiritual bullshit like this into, of all things, Bloody Roar? I mean, yeah, I gave Bloody Roar 3 crap for the mystical stuff, and yes, there is one brief mention of Gaia in one of the endings. But when it introduced the Tabula, it also brought in the Beast Crest and the XGC, which at the very least weren't already done to death, even down to the name, by other media. With titles like Illusion of Gaia, Gaia Seed, Gaia Crusaders, Master of Monsters, Disciples of Gaia, Gaia Master Dual Card Attacks, just to name a few, worlds named Gaia in games like Final Fantasy VII, all of its spin-offs, and Final Fantasy IX, or the planet Gaia in the Escaflowne TV series, or characters named Gaia such as in Grandia, the Gundam series at large, Evo Search for Eden, Battle Arena to Shinden, Captain Planet and the Planeteers, or social networking black holes of humanity such as Gaia Online.
Mankind also called the life forms taken by Gaia through natural selection, as well as the life forms that would have survived had they continued to evolve, the unborn.
Never mind that the unborn, at least in Buddhist terms, means having no origin, or not yet coming into existence, or the most literal definition, not yet born. So if you died, you've most certainly existed, and you probably have an origin. But even overlooking that for a moment, you're telling me that all forms of life, the countless species that have come and gone on this planet in the countless years it's been around, all of them together are the Unborn? And they somehow look like this?
The story. Oh, right. Everything I read earlier, that was just background information. During the XGC, X-Genome Code, incident 1 year ago, riots raged over the Earth by beasts that did not show the XGC, and all over the country small earthquakes shook the land.
That's not what happened at all. The zoanthropes with the XGC were the ones panicking because a bunch of them were turning up dead. But they didn't riot about it, and any riots and such prior largely died down with the world of coexistence rising to prominence. It's pretty telling that even the company behind every bloody war game stopped caring to the point they can barely remember what happened 2 games ago.
The cause was unknown, but as the Crest incident came to an end and the rioting and earthquakes,
which weren't happening,
subsided, people began to claim that all was due to the influence of the Stone Seal. Although the Stone Seal has been locked away,
which I guess means Yugo's ending where he destroyed it isn't canon,
the rioting and earthquakes have returned. This time the incidents are on a larger scale than those of a year ago. What could be behind it all?
Hey, I got a crazy idea, guys. Maybe, since we've just established a link between the recent civil unrest and natural disasters and the Stone Seal, why don't we destroy it? Oh, and we never actually see any riots, and we only ever see one earthquake, which... you know what, we'll get to that later.
Meanwhile, the cover art... it's Nagi front and center in her beast form, with Reiji and Ryoho behind her along with their beast forms. No mainstays of the series here, unless you count them tossing Yugo's beast form on the back, shoved into the lower corner opposite Shina's beast form. It looks like they're both trying to fight off the screenshot between them so they can fit properly on the back of the box. Also, Nagi's here too, in human form. I get it, Hudson, she exists. In terms of not supporting established characters, the Japanese cover art might be worse. The front is nondescript red lines and an eye, but on the back of the box, it's just the 3 new characters and the dragon, as well as a shot of Nagi's beast form's chest in the background.
I wonder what they're trying to draw my attention to.
As the game starts up, the first thing we see is Nagi and Zeon. Then the first character to appear in the montage is Nagi. Okay, timeout. In case it's not apparent already, these new characters are pushed really, really hard on the player. There's the cover art, there's the promotional material, there's the opening sequence in which all the new characters' montages are roughly twice as long as the other characters. Hell, Busuzima's only on screen for about a second in this sequence. Nagi in particular appears in almost every screenshot in the manual that isn't of a menu and is the first character to show up on every character select screen. Ryoho and Mana appear in almost every single character's cutscenes, more on that later, and with the exceptions of Yugo, Reiji, and a few other characters, the new characters have more cutscenes than everybody else and they even get their own separate ending theme when the credits roll. And even though Yugo and Zeon have a fair amount of cutscenes as well, that's because they're interacting almost exclusively with the new characters. Which, by the way, not to get ahead of myself, but Ryoho and Mana are the focus of every single ultimate and penultimate battle. Mana is even the symbol for both game data and career data in the memory card browser.
And with that, I've already played one of my rant cards for the video.
Now that the base story is covered, let's go over each individual character, and this is going to take a while, so I hope you're sitting comfortably. Since they want us to focus on her so much, let's start with 18-year-old Nagi Kirishima. Don't let your eyes deceive you, she is not in fact Kasumi from Dead or Alive. Her origin goes way back to Bloody Roar 3, a simpler time when she didn't use headbands as shirts and when she was mortally wounded trying to stand up to Zeon. At the same time, Gaia made a copy of the Unborn's powers within Nagi to try and destroy it. This somehow kept Nagi alive, but the powers of the Spurious were never used because Yugo and company took care of everything without her. A year later, when the earthquakes and riots start, her power awakens and she goes out to find Zeon.
I have to admit, sometimes I'm a bit envious of people who ignore storylines in fighting games. Because this is some bullshit.
For one, Gaia isn't very smart. Instead of choosing someone else that proved themselves in battle, like anyone from the previous Bloody War games, or anyone with a decent fighting background, she picks a seemingly random person that got murdered with no apparent difficulty by Xion. Also, Gaia did this so late that the rest of the game's cast was able to stop Xion before the power came into use? That's like Zordon creating an additional Power Ranger as the regular Power Rangers just got done blowing up the giant monster. 2. This singles out Yugo in particular as having dealt with the XGC incident, which, remember, he destroyed the tabula, so it couldn't be the cause of anything going on now. 3. What the hell is Nagi? I hesitate to call her a zoanthrope because, well, look at this shit. The red metallic accents, the arm blade, she's like Heavy Arms Gundam without the guns, which I guess just makes her a dam. This form also seems to cover her body more overall than her human form. Not that it stops the game from finding ways to fanservice the ever-loving shit out of her. This is what the game calls the spurious, which means it looks like something, in this case Xion's unborn form, but doesn't have its true qualities, even though it doesn't really resemble Xion's beast form at all.
Spurious can also mean based on false ideas or bad reasoning, which, I think that applies to a little more than just this character's beast form.
As a fighter, she has a lot of easy combos that do decent damage, to the point where I spent most of my time holding forward and mashing the punch or beast buttons with her. Her quote-unquote beast attacks all revolve around taking advantage of the blade on her arm, which means she can do some varied, lengthy combos, and the reach of the blade largely keeps her out of harm's way. As such, she can be incredibly annoying to play against, even though one of her beast drives, which is one of the bloodiest attacks in the game, somehow does very, very little damage. Perhaps her greatest asset is being able to make the opponent uncomfortable with her, awkward fight sounds.
Stop teasing me!
Next up from the new people is 19-year-old Reiji Takigawa, or as I like to think of him, angsty teenage Brian Fury. He used to be part of one of 4 monk clans called the Yaragarasu, which, for those of you who don't know, is the name of the crow god that acted as a guide to Japan's first emperor. The clans passed down beast transformation as a rite of passage into adulthood, and prior to that, it remained sealed. Reiji was an heir to the heads of one such clan, and thanks to the XGC incident, his seal was broken prematurely, and Reiji took this as an excuse to kill his dad, run away, and kill other zoanthropes while on the run from the rest of the Yaragarasu. I don't think Reiji's that bad an idea, since this series could have used a new antagonist, and his crow beast form gives some aerial combat possibilities outside of Jenny, while branching out to animal types that hadn't been explored much yet. The catch is, much like Nagi, he has a number of really easy short combos that can link together just by mashing kick and punch with very little recovery time, to the point that I could just spam the same string over and over through all of arcade mode. Also, Rage is one of the smaller and least intimidating male characters, who acts stereotypically evil to the point that he throws lame insults mid-fight,
Die quietly,
and even has a pose where he holds his head in one hand and laughs. That and he looks like an anime convention breakdancer that just got back from a sleepover at a tattoo parlor, and he sounds like an easy-listening DJ.
And this one goes out to all you puny creatures out there. It's Never Too Much by Paul Jackson Jr. on KZLS Smooth Jazz in the Morning.
And rounding out the new guys are Ryoho and Mana. Ryoho, real name Rao Mamurasaki, is a 37-year-old monk. Oddly enough, there's a Buddhist temple in Tokyo called Ryoho-ji. Allegedly, he's part of a secret temple that supports both Shinto and Buddhist religious practice. This specific part of his background insinuates that his temple was affected by Meiji Restoration laws which tried to separate Buddhism and Shinto, and those laws weren't all that successful because both had become integrated into everyday Japanese life. What's confusing is that these laws were dropped after World War II, partly because of similarities between the two, and partly because of people not seeing Shinto as a religion. Saying that there's a super secret temple now which supports both Shinto and Buddhism is kind of like saying 4chan is a super secret online message board that supports both Pokemon and Pokemon porn. It's not much of a secret, and while there are some people who will make a big deal about it, most people just shrug it off. Anyway, Ryoho's temple came under attack by the Unborn a year ago, and he lost his memory at some point. It's not really specific. He gets paired up with Mana, a 9-year-old shrine maiden with 2 birth defects, gigantic eyes, and apparently no hands. She's taking over her older sister's role of guarding and maintaining a seal holding back Gaia's beast, which appeared during the Unborn attack a year ago. A seal which happens to be on Ryoho, and which he doesn't know about for most of the game. Yeah, don't tell him or anything, Mana, that might actually be helpful. At the same time, she's being pursued by people who we never see, because she holds the power of the nine-tailed fox.
Was there some kind of buy one, get one free deal on mystical zoanthrope forms? You know what? I don't have enough cards for this, never mind.
What's strange about this isn't that Mana's beast form is 8 tails short of being a 9-tailed fox, but that the backstory implies the cause of the earthquakes and violence is the seal coming loose on Ryoho. So not only is Gaia doing a pretty shitty job of protecting the world, but now she's created something that's actually destroying it.
To Gaia, the cause of and solution to all of life's problems. Except the solution part.
Ryoho and Mana are very unique in that they function not as individual fighters, but as a team. Ryoho stays in human form the entire time while Mana can go into beast form, which is the only time she can attack or get hit by anyone. This offers the opportunity to do some nice change-ups where Mana can attack low while Ryoho goes high or vice versa. However, despite Ryoho's relative slowness and not being able to use Hyper Beast with these two, I could do 2 things. 1, a really simple punch combo that did at least half a health bar of damage, or spam beast drives. For whatever reason, they gave Ryoho and Mana a beast drive that completely drains the beast bar, which, if the main health bar is empty, is a 1, well, technically 2-hit kill. I'll go more in depth on how completely broken these two are later in the video. Now for everyone else. While checking out the riots, Yugo hears rumors about a quote-unquote Black Shadow, which is supposedly Nagi. He knows Nagi from the XGC incident and goes to look for her. How does he know Nagi? Hell if I know, he just does, and apparently did before despite never mentioning her. Alice is a volunteer with the WOC treating earthquake victims, but Mana appears and says the earthquakes and everything are her and Ryoho's fault. She leads her to Ryoho, which leads to Alice fighting Ryoho and Mana at the beginning of arcade mode instead of the end, meaning there's not much reason for Alice's arcade mode to last more than 2 or 3 stages, but it does. Shion remembers killing a woman, supposedly Nagi, during the XGC incident and finds Zoanthropes are trying to defeat him again. That's about it. There's a hint that he may not be acting of his own free will, but there's really not much to the primary antagonist of the game. Gato is trying to sort things out in his position at the United Nations when he hears Shina has gone missing, so he sets out to find her.
And of course, his ending has next to nothing to do with her.
Shina, meanwhile, is under the orders of an unnamed country to go to Japan and look for a missing team of investigators that disappeared near a temple somewhere. So that ending from Bloody Roar 3 where she said screw you and walked away from mercenary life? Yeah, that didn't happen. Stone is still somehow alive, although he's constantly in pain. He hears about someone capable of sealing beast power and seeks out that person, hoping it will end his constant suffering. I'd feel worse for him if he looked or acted like he was in pain beyond when he gets punched in the face. Shenlong is on the run from aggressive zoanthropes when he comes across a fortune teller, who says that he must be blessed at a temple to get rid of an evil spirit that's attached itself to him. Busuzima gave up his usual experimentation after the XGC incident and became kinda depressed, but the riots recently led him, for some reason, to try and capture the dragon to synthesize a new type of zoanthrope. He finds a white fox in the forest and follows it to try and capture that as well.
And Busuzima knows there's a dragon out there because...
Jenny is quite literally searching for Japanese legends like the water dragon and nine-tailed fox out of boredom. Bakuryu is checking out the earthquakes and violence when he finds a white fox and follows it. That's pretty much it. And come to think of it, that can describe the backstory of a lot of people in this game. I don't know why I'm not just copy-pasting this audio and changing the name at the front every time. Anyway, Long is checking out the earthquakes and violence when he finds a white fox and follows it. And lastly, Oriko is checking out the earthquakes and violence when he finds a white fox and follows it. Now then, let's go back to this opening sequence. It abruptly breaks down and starts showing one of the more infamous aspects of Bloody Roar 4.
Here. He's in here. Spurious. What did you do to Maggie?
Where do I even begin with this? I mean, the obvious point is that the cutscenes have terrible voiceovers. Especially if, of all the voiceovers in the game, they thought those were the ones good enough to get spliced into the introduction. But, let's just save that for later.
Not just that, the music in the background sounds odd. Like something you'd hear on a farm in a really edgy Legend of Zelda game. Which brings me to the soundtrack. I'm still on the fence about Bloody Roar 4's music. I don't know if it's just an overall bad soundtrack or if it's simply inappropriate for the game. The music was composed by Yoshihiro Tsukahara, who previously worked on the sound effects for Bloody Roar 2 and arranged tracks for Soreo Tobatara, an album from 2000 by J-pop singer Kotoko. For those unfamiliar with studio lingo, an arranger takes already composed tracks and literally rearranges them, in terms of structure, harmony, or adding introductions, transitions, stuff like that. Unofficially, at least for video games, this game was Tsukahara's first gig as a full-on composer.
Keep in mind what Bloody Roar's soundtracks have been like to this point. Then imagine how you would have reacted if you found out that the new composer for this next game in the series was a guy whose musical experience consisted primarily of putting together tracks like this.
While Tsukahara would go on to bigger and better things as a composer on Suikoden 5 and a performer for some of the DJ Max Technica games, as well as getting his own studio, this soundtrack can't seem to make up its mind on what kind of music to go for. And several tracks seem to just have electric guitar parts in them as a way of saying, I kind of remember what the music in the other games was like. For example, here's the rest of the music during the opening cinematic. It's primarily synthetic sounds and piano, sounding like they're trying to be ominous and mysterious even though the opening is largely just zoanthropes hitting each other as their names crawl across the screen. It feels really out of place. Most of the other tracks are seemingly themed around the levels themselves, but not necessarily that a fight is going to happen in those levels. They're generally up-tempo, but otherwise have no energy to them, no sense of conflict, no sense that you're about to throw down with someone. And at times, the songs don't even fit well with the stages they're playing for. This was the case with some tracks in Primal Fury as well, but now there are only a few tracks that come close to fitting the established motif for the series. On the plus side, if you want to experience a new hell, you can just sit at the main menu and take in the 8-second long never-ending loop, which sounds more like a 4-second long never-ending loop. On a strange note, the physical edition of the Bloody Roar 4 soundtrack credits Hitoshi Kimoto of Hudson as the, quote, original game producer. Kimoto is a producer who worked on several Hudson and Konami titles, but not only did he not work on Bloody Roar 4, he didn't work on any Bloody Roar titles, so I have no idea why he's credited for this.
Unless he had his name stricken from the records, which I don't blame him.
Getting down to the Ballyhooed 8 gameplay modes, they are as follows: Arcade, Time Attack, Versus, Training, Sparring, Survival, Combattle, and Career. Combattle is self-explanatory, and considering it a mode of gameplay is kind of laughable. Sparring mode is like playing arcade mode without actually making any progress. It simulates single-round fights against an AI opponent with a 60-second timer, but considering you can set the AI to attack in training mode, there's virtually no reason for this mode to exist, and I only played it once to get footage for this video. Time attack is the same as it's ever been, completing arcade mode as fast as possible. The same goes for training, though they added color coding for special and guard break attacks, which goes unexplained in the manual. Survival is also the same, just beat as many people as possible in a row. However, this mode, time attack, and arcade mode can't be used to unlock any hidden characters. In fact, unlockables in this game are non-existent outside of the hidden characters. Everything from Primal Fury like no walls, speed up, speed down, kid mode, beast mode only, all that, gone. Bloody Roar 3 cheats like one-hit knockdowns, one fall mode, no blocking mode, nope. Extras are as bare bones as they come, and aside from a stage or two, everything is unlocked using the final mode, Career Mode. Career Mode has the player pick a character and then progress all over a massive sphere-laden grid, fighting other characters to earn DNA points, a currency which can be used to purchase various upgrades also unlocked by winning certain fights.
Now let's get something straight. Career Mode, at its base, is a good idea. Being able to screw around modifying some of your favorite or least favorite characters with different abilities like extra high jumps, attack boosts, guard boosts, being able to add extra combos, using DNA points that you can get back by unequipping abilities that you don't want anymore, and being able to use capture command abilities to assign other characters' moves to people. So you can do things like assigning Bakuryu the quarter circle forward kick maneuver of Alice, or having Busuzima spam Yugo's quarter circle forward punch repeatedly. It's kind of fun to mess around with. For 10 to 15 minutes.
The charm of seeing characters not designed to perform certain moves, their character models sometimes spazzing as they try to perform moves for characters larger or smaller than they are, wears off quickly due to the rest of Career Mode's structure. If you go into this expecting something like Weapon Master Mode from Soul Calibur 2, which came out a few months before Bloody Roar 4, you'll be woefully disappointed with this. First off, there's no sort of story or even flavor text to any of this. You simply pick a space on the map and get thrown into a random stage against a random opponent for one round. Occasionally the game tries to break the monotony with a 2-round fight against a specific person, or even a 3-round fight at the last node. But the difficulty of the fights never ramps up, so there's no challenge to any of it. I lost track of how many fights I won by doing the same 2 or 3 hit combos over and over and over. Sometimes I didn't even have to do that, as I could just duck and kick over and over and win with relative ease. I get the feeling this was supposed to become harder, because in the Japanese version the later sections do become more difficult. The moves that can be unlocked are rather limited, and some characters have more moves unlockable than others. Yugo and Alice each have 5 moves unlockable, and Jenny has 4. Everyone else has either 2 or 3 moves unlockable except Xion and Nagi, whom both only have 1 unlockable move. It's also disappointing that you can't steal beast drives. That last bit's somewhat trivial, but tell me you wouldn't want to see Gato or Stun or Xion doing Alice's Bunny Love beast drive. Additionally, none of the abilities have any explanation for what they do. The description section, which I thought this would help clear up, just explains the bare-bones basics of the game. Some things like heavy block always on or kick damage bonus are pretty self-explanatory, but unless you're familiar with fighting game lingo, and especially if you're not familiar with Bloody Roar fighting mechanics, how are you supposed to understand abilities with names like ground damage stall increase, heavy blocks block unblockable and short stall, or how about command move follows mid-move command work? There is a map to show where you are and how far you have to go, but the map doesn't show which spaces you've already cleared or how each section connects to each other, and you won't know where most points lead until after clearing each fight. Some sections don't have paths leading up or down or side to side, and it leads to some really annoying backtracking, not just to complete each fight, but to simply progress to the right side of the map, where the last few battles earn you 800 points, and the final node also gives an extra beast drive. This is certainly not worth the roughly 2 hours it might take you to get all the way to the right side of the map. Of course, that's if you don't realize that you can go in a straight line to the right, and get almost all the way across the map in about 15 minutes. If you are satisfied with this and want to do it with every character, you can't. The game may have over a dozen fighters, but career mode only has 8 save slots, so unless you want to have 2 save files on 2 memory cards, you're shit out of luck. Oh, and there is an option to use your career mode characters in things like Versus and Arcade mode, but that assumes that you have someone who wants to play Bloody Roar 4 with you, which hasn't happened with me in the past, 4 years. That's assuming you don't lose your progress somewhere along the way though. It's incredibly easy to accidentally back out of career mode, and even if you have autosave turned on, that for some reason doesn't apply to career mode data. No, in career mode you either save manually, or you don't save at all. And of course, this can also happen. In which case you have to reset and start from wherever you saved last. If you remembered to save. Speaking of characters, career mode is the one and only place the hidden characters can be unlocked. You can even encounter some of these characters while playing as someone else in arcade mode, but even if you beat them, they'll stay hidden until you get them in career mode.
Who are these hidden characters, you might ask? Well, it's not Kronos and Ganesha, and who can blame them for not leaving the Zoanthrope Kingdom for this? I mean, it's not exactly much of a mystery, considering all of them show up in the opening sequence.
Bakuryu and Uranus are obvious hidden characters at this point, but for some reason Long and Shina were also made hidden characters. I didn't like when Bloody Roar 2 made Gato a hidden character, but I was flat out confused by this. There's nothing different about Long and Shina, but they were made unlockable characters instead of, any of the 3 new characters. Although, the dragon form of Ryoho is the final hidden character.
Why a dragon? Well, let's look back at that user poll from BloodyRoar.com that I referenced in a prior video.
In this poll, the number 1 beast form users asked for was some kind of dragon, and below that at number 3 were the 4 holy beasts of Chinese astrology, one of which is an Azure dragon. Also making the list at number 2 was some type of bird, which might explain Reiji's presence. Anyway, each of these characters gets unlocked by earning a set number of DNA points. 5,000 unlocks Long, 10,000 Shina, 30,000 Bakuryu, 50,000 Uranus, and a whopping 100,000 points unlocks Dragon Ryoho. Unlocking anyone takes some time, as initially fights only net 100 DNA points. Those points do increase gradually while moving further to the right of the map, but replaying any fight at any point only nets 50 DNA points. Even worse, the game didn't plan out DNA points properly to unlock everyone. Completing every single fight on the map only gets you 96,000 points, far, far below the 100,000 to unlock the final character. The only option then is to do 80 50-point fights, which even with damage and speed boosts, is a long, dull slog through a bunch of AI opponents you've already fought dozens upon dozens of times by now. There was also a bug I encountered where, despite earning every character, my save data didn't recognize that I'd unlocked everyone, so I had to go back into career mode and complete 5 more 50-point fights so it would re-unlock all 5 characters. And as a side note, that green bar you see on the side of the screen, that's not my recording software, that's part of the game. It shows up in career mode and every part of the options menu.
Now, I'm not saying this was an unfinished product, but... Son of a bitch, who's... Cut this part out. Finally get a chance to film. This happens. Where was I?
Getting to the look of the game, it's readily apparent that not much time went into the character models. Everyone that isn't a new character just had their character model and costumes recycled from Extreme. However, some characters do have third costumes. Specifically, 8 of them do. Nagi, Bakuryu, Alice, Jian, Reiji, and for some reason, Jenny, Uriko, and Shenlong. This is a step up from Extreme, but it's still lagging behind 3's offering 3 costumes for everyone, or even 2 having unlockable 4th costumes for everyone. Uriko is by far the most normal of the extra costumes, as it's just her regular look but with baggy pants and a black and white color scheme for her beast form. Reiji's is also pretty reserved, as it just adds a vest and makes almost all the colors gray. Most of the costumes, however, seem a bit off in some way, like Bakuryu for example. It's not his wearing a backpack the entire fight that's weird and out of place, but that his beast form has his human hair for some reason. Shenlong went the Sonic Boom route and taped his hands for some reason. Alice is in a dress with what looks like knee-high cowboy boots. Nagi is somehow wearing less clothing now. Jenny is somehow not wearing less clothing despite having a boob window big enough to be renamed the English Channel.
And then there's Xion, who, I'm not gonna lie, looks amazing. Ladies and gentlemen, the new and, okay, I can't say improved, Xion. Your main antagonist, everyone!
Have you noticed yet how ridiculously dark this game is? And I don't mean dark in a trying to create a brooding atmosphere kind of way. I mean dark in a nobody paid the electric bill kind of way. There's very little lighting in most areas, and it makes the fighters and the environments look washed out. I'd say maybe this backs up what Kenji Fukuya said about the GameCube's lighting and shading capabilities in that Primal Fury interview, but it goes beyond that. Take a look at this game compared to Bloody Roar 3 released a couple years earlier. Everything looks so much brighter and more alive in 3, whereas 4 looks like what might happen if you tried playing 3 on a TV with a busted brightness setting. You also might have noticed that this is the aquarium stage that's shown up in more than one Bloody Roar game prior to this. Of the 10 stages, since one of them is just a clone with a slightly different background.
I'm your clone. Who are you? My clone. Then who am I? You're not you. Who are you if I'm not me? I'm you, but I'm not me!
Despite having more levels than the past couple games in the series, a lot of them are rehashes of levels from prior games. The freezing space? That's the ice house from 3. The underpass? It's the freeway from Extreme. The dojo? Chinese temple. The slums? Back alley and Slum Street. The rooftop? Modeled after Midnight City and Midnight Rooftop. The big issue, though, isn't imagination with level design.
Okay, actually it is, but not in terms of unique stages.
The problem is force fields. These things are in every stage for no apparent reason, save for areas like the prison arena which need them. But they're even in places like the dojo. There are walls on all sides, guys. Why make this stage smaller than it has to be? Or are we supposed to believe that people all over the world are dealing with riots, earthquakes, and randomly getting trapped in force field boxes?
Into a mime!
And that's not the biggest issue. Some of the stages were small to begin with, or seemingly not designed to have this limitation, but putting in force fields makes the space even smaller, to the point that it can be difficult to move around. Playing as Dragon Ryoho in these areas can really make you feel like a fat guy in a little coat.
Fat guy in a little coat.
Take it off, dickhead, I'm serious.
Richard, what's happening?
Unlike the walls in previous Bloody Roar games, these force fields can be really hard to break through without deliberately trying to hit the same one over and over. A number of stages do allow for the fight to continue in a slightly different area if you knock an opponent through a certain force field, expanding on what happened in a few stages in Extreme. However, they didn't expand on it much. Only 4 stages take advantage of this. And I hesitate to say that because in the sewer stage, the quote-unquote new area is just an extra 40 square feet or so of the same space. I suppose I should just be glad that there aren't any weird collision issues when someone gets KO'd into a car. Oh my god! You can argue that the game at least runs smoothly, since that's been a series staple since the beginning, but that's also not necessarily true. To get the game to run somewhat well, some sacrifices had to be made to other presentation aspects. For example, take a look at the shadows on the ground. And by shadows, I mean look at those blocky splotches on the ground that somewhat mimic the fighter's movements at about 1/4 of the frame rate of everything else. It even does this in the victory animations. More importantly, the game does suffer from slowdown on certain levels when certain fighters or moves are used. If it were just little hiccups here and there, I wouldn't bring it up, but one character in particular consistently causes the frame rate to tank. Reiji. When Reiji is in beast form, he has feathers that drop off his body. In some levels with moving background pieces or water effects, specifically the sewer and the freezing space, Reiji being in beast form causes the game to run slower than Ganesha in a 40k marathon. It gets so slow that I started doing something called the Slow Bowl, where I'd have two Reijis fight each other in the sewer and see just how slow the fight would get. On average, each individual round was about 12 seconds slower than it would have been without the lag. You might wonder then why I would just not use his beast form unless it was absolutely necessary. But Bloody Roar 4's new health system all but makes it necessary to stay in beast form as much as possible. When a fight starts, you have a completely full health bar and beast gauge, so you can only lose health by not going into beast form as soon as possible. And unlike past games where you had to build up energy to go into beast form, if there's even a sliver of blue in your beast gauge, you can go into beast form. I'm amazed with how often these characters shift in and out of beast form in a single fight that their bodies don't just say, screw this, and spontaneously combust. What's really bizarre about this system is that when in beast form, the normal health bar not only doesn't recover slightly, it doesn't even go down when you get hit. Only the beast gauge decreases. Aside from it making no sense that getting hit doesn't lower your overall health, like the beast form is some kind of sumo suit around the fighter, it also throws out the idea of strategically managing beast form use over the course of a fight, in favor of a get in beast form and stay in beast form mentality. Adding to this is that holding down the beast button will drain the regular health bar to fill the beast gauge, and no matter how full it is, you go into beast form upon letting the button go. So now you don't even have to throw a single punch to get back into beast form. Even more ridiculous is that you can go into hyper beast form by doing this, but you have to completely empty the health bar to do it. While this hyper beast form doesn't have a time limit like in prior games, the trade-off of giving up your health bar, as well as any amount of the beast gauge that could regenerate over the course of a fight, is absolutely not worth it. Which is funny because AI opponents love doing this. I would just sit back and wait until their health was almost gone, then attack so they'd only have a little health left and not go into hyper beast mode. Congratulations, you wasted 80% of your health for nothing. Another change to the beast gauge system is that beast drives still force you back into human form, but they only take off a small portion of the beast gauge. With a full gauge, a player could easily spam 4 beast drives in a row, but the apparent solution to balancing this out was to make beast drives ridiculously weak. They can damage the beast gauge as well as the health bar if the opponent is in beast form, but it does so little damage that it's not worth sacrificing the beast gauge, especially when you consider that most characters can deal half a health bar or more of damage with a simple string of 3 or 4 attacks, and depending on the opponent, some power characters can take off over half a health bar with 1 attack. Again, to try and balance things out, the game makes it so you have to drain both the health bar and the beast gauge to win. Emptying the health bar immediately forces an opponent into beast mode. I'm not entirely convinced this wasn't done as a way of extending fights, since the health and beast gauges, outside of beast drives, can be drained extremely fast from a few basic attacks. Never mind characters that use combo circles like Long or Shenlong. The worst part about this health system, though, is that it gives a huge advantage to Ryoho and Mana. For these two, Ryoho's health is the main health bar, and Mana only takes damage when in beast form, so she's essentially the beast gauge. Because of this, the game doesn't recognize Ryoho and Mana as a single character, and when you hold the beast button, Mana refills her beast gauge and Ryoho's health doesn't decrease, effectively allowing anyone playing as them to spam beast drives to their heart's content. This is especially bad because, remember, one of their beast drives can completely drain the opponent's beast gauge. As such, almost all of my fights playing as Ryoho and Mana consisted of the following pattern: beast drive, recover beast gauge, repeat.
Of course, these fights were totally different from the usual Bloody Roar fare because of that new 3D combat system that the promo material talked about. Which is kind of like saying I just bought a new used car.
The differences are primarily little things, not counting what was mentioned earlier. The combat in Bloody Roar 4 is nearly identical to the other Bloody Roar games leading up to it. Movesets for returning characters are the same, to the point that if you compare the instruction booklets for Bloody Roar 4 and Bloody Roar 3, almost all of them are exactly the same, or they list moves that were around but not mentioned previously. I can't be too surprised by or critical of that, considering that on top of that, a lot of the animal sounds haven't changed since the very first game. Control-wise, the kick and block buttons were switched. Of course, I can always just go back and remap these, and in the process add punch, kick, and beast to a single button, which effectively turns on one-button beast drives. Double ducking is gone, so double tapping down just causes you to sidestep. It's minor, but there are moves I miss doing from this position. They also got rid of the kip-up attack, which has been in every Bloody Roar game to this point. As such, feel free to attack any grounded opponents, as the worst they can do is just move out of the way. On the plus side, they finally tweaked the AI so as you advance through arcade mode, they won't just stand still and let you throw them at the beginning of a fight. They'll even sidestep to get away from it. It's a step forward, among a number of steps back.
And on the matter of steps back, Bloody Roar 4 has full motion cutscenes using in-game character models that are fully voiced over. Now that might sound like a step up from the captioned stills from Bloody Roar 3, or the silent anime films from Bloody Roar Extreme, but just watch.
My technique? Lose to beast power?
Do you know anything about it? This is a strange place, after all.
I can feel it. I can feel it. Only a little, but it's inside you, the unborn!
You know? Why have all these crazy zoanthropes been coming after me?
I'm not engaging in hyperbole when I say my elementary school's Christmas play had better acting. The cutscenes have stilted, awkward voiceovers and animation throughout. The lip flaps on the character models were originally done for the Japanese script, even though this game released in the Americas and Europe first. Not only do some voices stop while the lips keep moving, the scenes aren't timed properly, so there are a bunch of really long pauses in between each line of dialogue.
But why is Nagi loyal to the unborn?
Though sometimes the opposite problem also shows up, where voices get cut off by a scene transition.
What in the world do you have me fighting What is that?
Also, you might notice that the subtitles look nothing like the subtitles from the opening sequence. Not only that, but they're rather poorly translated. Several times they don't match what the voices are saying, and they can't seem to decide if they want to have a black box behind the text or not. Okay, now it doesn't have the... nope, never mind, there it is again. Wait, no, now it's gone. And, okay, now it's back again, and... oh, alright, it's gone. The bad acting extends to the victory animations and fight sounds too, but mercifully some of them have the tendency to not play the voiceovers at all.
You win! You win! You win! You win!
Farewell.
But let's...
Can I help you?
I'm giving you one chance to not die.
What?
I'll spare your worthless life if you surrender the tabula.
I'm sorry, what is a tabula?
It is a stone.
Oh! I know who has that. Just go up the street, take a right, go straight for a couple hours, and his house will be on the right with the ugly lawn gnomes in the mailbox. Ask for Jorge when you get there.
Where were we?
Let's ask a not-so-simple question. Who do we blame for this? The actors? Some of them had next to no voice acting credits prior to this, save for a lot of them being credited as extra voices in Shenmue 2. And perhaps unsurprisingly, many of them don't have any voice credits beyond this game. For example, Jenny is voiced by Alison Noonan. She's a singer who also plays cello and piano, and her only voice credit aside from this is for a Japanese rail shooter called The Maze of the Kings, in which her acting is just as bad.
Wow! The route changes every time in this labyrinth. For protecting from intruders. Let's go!
Actually, Ryoho's voice actor was in this game too, as a giant floating King Tut head. He was also Morpheus in Resident Evil Dead Aim, and I don't mean to alarm you, but his acting was better in that.
You will not destroy this for me.
Barely. Bakuryu's voice actor is Raj Ramaya, who, like Alison Noonan, is primarily a musician, doing composition and lyrical work. His most prominent voice role aside from this is Bruce McGivern in Resident Evil Dead Aim.
Our party guests seem to arrive. Hurry up, Molly!
Sadly, I take his performance as Bruce over Bakuryu here, who sounds like he's about to doze off from boredom.
I think this is the origin of both zoanthrope problems and the earthquakes. I am Bakuryu. Scourge of the night.
Wait, what? What? Scourge? How did that make the final cut? Shina's voice actress is Karen Lee, whom prior to this recorded call center voice messages and narrations for Japanese commercials. She primarily does administrative work on a number of Sims games, and this is the only role she's had that isn't listed as additional voices.
Yeah! Hey! What is this?
And it shows. Then there are some voice actors who probably should have just known better. Uriko's voice actress has had several roles in the past, but is quite famous, or infamous depending on how you look at it, for one in particular. It's Lynn Harris, and she voiced Rebecca Chambers in the original Resident Evil.
My interpretation is off a little.
Perhaps it's no coincidence then that Uriko's voice is as ear-splittingly annoying as it's ever been.
Well, looks like we're here!
Uranus is voiced by Donna Burke. She was Angela in Silent Hill 2 and Claudia in Silent Hill 3, and more recently, the iDroid voice in Metal Gear Solid 5. And of course, her character has 0 cutscenes. Nagi is voiced by Erica Ash, whom, I'm not making this up, is a comedian, among other things, and would go on to become a cast member on Mad TV.
You think I'll be flying all over the world talking like a bitch for these? You can kill that noise right now, because I'm straight up gangster. You better ask somebody.
Fitting, I suppose, since a lot of Nagi's fight noises sound laughably out of place.
Here I go. Yeah! Just for you!
The last one I'll mention is Yugo's voice, Rob Narita, who has appeared in several Broadway and off-Broadway shows and on numerous television shows such as Grey's Anatomy, P.S. I Love You, and he even played Joel Dung-po on Max Headroom.
Helen Zeno, I am Dung-po, a fellow controller of Theoras.
But in this game, Yugo sounds like the dim-witted meathead he's perceived to be in some of the older Bloody Roar games.
If that's the way you want it, that's the way you'll get it!
Eh? I feel something from you. What's in here, old man?
And Stun is voiced by a guy named Ward E. Sexton. If that name doesn't ring a bell, his voice probably will, because he did this.
Resident Evil 4.
Going over the history of the rest of the voice cast is like reading a top 10 list for crappy voice acting in video games. Aside from Resident Evil Dead Aim, there's Resident Evil Survivor, the PlayStation Clock Tower game, Trag, F-Zero GX, and God help us all, Michigan Report from Hell, which, come to think of it, Lynn Harris voiced in and directed that game. Compare this to the Japanese voice cast, which, with a few exceptions, consists of people experienced with voiceover in games or animation, several of whom voiced in fighting games before. For example, Reiji was voiced by Masakazu Suzuki, who also voiced Yang in a few Street Fighter titles prior to this. Bakuryu's voice is Akira Ishida, aka Zealous from several Slayers series. Toru Okawa voiced Stun. He also voiced Joseph Joestar in the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure arcade fighter and Ryu in Street Fighter III Third Strike. Uranus is voiced by Eriko Fujimaki, who also voiced Uranus in Bloody Roar 3. Oh my god, a returning voice actress. Just listen to this cutscene with Shina and tell me if you can pin down where you might have heard a voice like this before.
その竜の力の余波で調査団の人たちは意識を失ったってとこかな。
Shina was voiced by Atsuko Tanaka, now known for her work voicing Motoko Kusanagi in the Ghost in the Shell series, and after this game, the Amazon in Dragon's Crown, and Bayonetta in the Bayonetta series, among many, many other roles. But do I blame the voice cast for how bad the performances are, or is this a Metroid Other M situation where it's actually the director that is largely responsible? In this case, as he's called, the director of narration recording is Tomoyuki Hamada. Prior to this, he was a composer and arranger of music going back to the mid-90s, namely on the Sentimental Graffiti dating sim series. Wait a minute, so they hired musicians and composers to direct and perform the voiceovers, but they hired an arranger to compose the music. Great. That's just great.
What's really annoying about these cutscenes is that several of them have the same lines recycled across multiple scenes, and rather than re-record them or, fix the translation issues, they just copy-pasted one recording across every single scene.
What? Is this energy Gaia? What? Is this energy Gaia? Well then. Show me your true self. Well then. Show me your true self.
On a similar note, because of the way arcade mode is laid out, every single character has to talk to Ryoho and Mana at the end. Mana does most of the talking, which is unfortunate because she's a worse actor than Ryoho. But what also sucks is that most of the characters have the same dialogue spiel from Mana at the end. And not just the same dialogue, the same camera angles, the same animations, everything. And to prove my point, here are clips from several different characters' endings, all overlaid on top of each other.
Oh, wait! I'm so sorry before. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you everything. If the resealing is complete, the coma and the violence should stop. That's why I needed the strength of strong zoanthropes such as you.
Alright. I've stalled long enough. It's time to show and explain what goes on in these cutscenes.
I've got to see.
Gato finds an apparently mute Shina and beats the shit out of her. And leaves. Then he somehow ends up at a temple where Ryoho and Mana are waiting.
Relax, relax. They're in a coma, but I'm protecting them.
What? Who? Who's in a coma?
One very strong girl went down a good path. But she almost went out of control.
Stronger? You mean Shina? She didn't seem that out of control when we saw her standing perfectly still, or even afterwards when she was just doubled over from getting beat up by a 6.5-foot tall ripped French guy. She did fight Gato, but they've had a family rivalry of sorts since Bloody Roar 2, so it's not weird to see these two fight each other. Then Ryoho says there's no time to explain, even though there clearly is, and fights you. This happens every time you encounter them, and it acts as a precursor to the final battle. So you beat up Ryoho, and Mana either breaks the seal on him, because apparently he thinks we'll be fine, or it comes off on its own. It changes depending on who you're playing as. Wait, didn't the backstory say he didn't know about the seal on him?
What? The power's increasing? What in the world?
Then comes the same scene that appears in almost every character's arcade run where Ryoho turns into the final boss.
I'm sorry, I can't possibly take any of that seriously. I'm just imagining how Ryoho's voice actor had to contort his face in order to sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger falling out of an airplane.
And welcome to the final boss of every character in arcade mode. Except for Dragon Ryoho, who fights Gato in the final stage for no apparent reason. This could be a challenging fight, except there's a really easy way to beat him. Back up as far as possible and go into beast form. Being far away from the dragon puts him into his running animation, which is a flying animation which he doesn't cancel out of. In this time you can run under him to the other side of the arena. You might wonder why I'd suggest not fighting the boss, and it's because look at his health bar. Or rather his beast gauge, since he doesn't have a health bar. Staying far away lures him into using his beast drives, which can be blocked. One takes off a quarter of his beast gauge and the other empties it completely, at which point you can just hit Ryoho with one attack and win. Even if it doesn't completely drain his health, the time's up tiebreaker of having more health than the opponent also works. That's right, you can win this without attacking at all. And just to drive home that attempting to fight the final boss is the worst thing you can do, losing this fight, unlike every other fight in arcade mode, is a game over. No continues, no nothing. You have to start all over again. Anyway, you beat the dragon, Gato calls Ryoho's dragon form unbelievable, and Mana explains everything in a long-winded exposition dump.
Ryoho is an ancient magical beast with incredible power. He's a dragon vessel. And the dragon's power is so immense, and his existence so dangerous.
Then why would Gaia bring out the dragon in the first place? Wait, stop. Guys, you're panning the camera too far.
To reseal the broken seal, it was necessary to remove it completely first. That's why I needed the strength of strong zoanthropes such as you.
Then why not just find a group of strong zoanthropes in a back alley somewhere and let them beat the shit out of Ryoho and his dragon form instead of luring one possibly to his or her death? And of course, Gato is perfectly fine with this.
I feel the same energy from you as the girl who went out of control. Is she your...
Eh? Oh, that's my daughter. Well, there's no blood connection, but I...
Is it sad that this is the most their relationship has been discussed since Bloody Roar 2?
It left an intense fire when it swooped down earlier.
What? What the hell are you talking about?
What? Don't worry about it. She shouldn't have lost consciousness from just that.
Oh good, apparently what sounds like Shina getting bombs dropped on her head isn't even enough to knock her out.
Ah, you love your daughter as well.
Well, I can't say it directly to her.
And fade to black and credits along with stills of the cutscenes that we just saw. Unless you're playing as Dragon Ryoho Koryu or Uranus, in which case there are no stills to show.
You know what? This ending could have been okay if, the dialogue wasn't mangled by the translation and the acting. And, if Shina's ending brought up anything we just saw.
Nope. You might not even fight Gato at all in Shina's arcade run. Jesus!
This isn't poison.
I think she feels the power of the dragon radiating from Ryoho like a Dragon Ball Z character. But that's just a guess because I have no idea what's going on.
Didn't an investigative team come here?
Oh, the people Shina was looking for are in a coma. Then why did that come up in Gato's cutscenes? Meanwhile, Shina reacts to Ryoho's challenge about the way you'd expect.
Hey! What is this?
One fight later, Mana breaks the seal and...
I can feel the pressure building! What are you?
Apparently it gets really windy when the seal gets broken. But only when Shina is standing near it.
And one timeout victory later...
What exactly were you guys planning here?
Plan? How could we plan this? Oh, wait! I'm sorry about before.
Oh hey, it's the same monologue we heard earlier. Let's just fast forward a bit. Apparently the dragon's power somehow caused the investigative team to go into comas. And if it did that to them, how come it hasn't happened to anybody else?
I understand most of it now.
That makes one of us, Shina.
I've got to make contact soon. Or this place is going to get bombed.
What? Why would they send Shina and an investigative team to this place and then bomb it before they have a chance to get out of there?
But what should I tell them? I can't possibly tell them a dragon is here.
Tell them there are innocent civilians in the area, and the investigative team. Tell them not to bomb a place they didn't even bother determining whether or not it was a threat. Tell them anything!
2 characters. I'm only 2 characters in and I already feel like quitting.
Bakuryu finds Koryu at some point, and I have no idea what Koryu is talking about. It's probably trying to play up an old Bakuryu versus new Bakuryu angle, but nothing he said ties into that.
It's just my opinion, but if you can't defeat that technique, you need to restart your training.
He's a robot. Restarting his training would consist of reformatting his brain and installing ninjutsu.exe like he just fell out of the Matrix.
The power of the changing will only increase. Can you control it until the end?
I'm just going to assume that he's talking about zoanthropes going out of control and rioting. But I want you to note that after this fight, Bakuryu looks fine. But in the very next cutscene, he's stumbling around grabbing his arm like he's injured. Yeah, great job, Mana. You got the guy who's supposed to help reseal the dragon injured by apparently leading him into Koryu. Somehow Bakuryu nails down this place as the cause of the earthquakes and riots. Then Ryoho challenges him.
Huh? You wanna fight?
One fight and Dragon Ryoho killing himself with beast drives later, and we can skip over the monologue.
So that's why it's been getting easier for us Zoanthropes to become violent.
How? How does the seal coming loose cause zoanthropes to go out in the street and start punching the nearest person? And why do I even bother asking this, knowing that it will never get adequately explained?
Is he okay?
It's okay. Just sleeping, I think.
Silly Bakuryu, don't you remember? Getting hit while in beast form doesn't affect your regular health at all. And Bakuryu runs off, leaving behind some souvenir firewood.
And that's how a lot of these endings go. Mana vomits exposition, the other character says, "Oh, okay," and walks off. So for a change of pace, let's check Busuzima's ending. I immediately regret this decision.
Aside from apparently getting kicked in the nuts several times, judging by his voice, Busuzima tracks the fox he was following to Ryoho, who is understandably pissed about what Busuzima is doing.
No mercy for you!
No, stop! I'm so scared! What am I saying?
Why does Busuzima suddenly have a British accent? He's Japanese.
Little fox, this old man's going to take you to a good place, okay?
Dear viewers, please use this time to do anything that will help you forget what you just saw. I'd promise it won't happen again, but I'd probably be lying. So that happens, then the seal comes off of Ryoho all by itself, one gauge draining beast drive later, and...
It's all over for the dragon. I'm gonna take this guy home and study him with just one more hit.
Dumbass, you already knocked him out. What do you mean one more hit? He realizes almost immediately that Mana resealed the dragon and he can't actually study Ryoho. So then he turns his attention back to Mana. I present to you the rest of this ending without any commentary.
Hey! Wait! Oh, you little fox!
No!
Even in beast form, why would you bite Busuzima in the ass? You have no idea where that's been!
Stun just wanders into the temple and asks Ryoho and Mana if they can seal beast power, and Ryoho responds by threatening to murder him. Yeah, real threatening, Ryoho. I'd be more intimidated if I didn't just sidestep you to death. It's around this point that Ryoho realizes Stun isn't hiding his face, to which Mana adds,
A man-mad zoanthrope!
What? What? Man-mad. Not only did the typo get into the game, the voice actress read the typo! Apparently not questioning what the hell man-mad is supposed to mean.
Hudson, translate the... I can't even pretend to give a shit at this point.
Then the seal comes loose, the dragon screws itself, and...
It looks like I've been rescued by this vile body again.
Yeah, rescued from getting your ass kicked so you can continue to live in constant pain. Mana explains that she can't seal Stun's beast power because Ryoho isn't exactly a zoanthrope, and her abilities are designed to work only on the dragon. Stun's reaction is surprisingly calm, considering that in Bloody Roar 3, he was almost driven to insanity and his body was on the verge of breaking down entirely. and in Extreme, his body did break down and he had to be pieced back together Humpty Dumpty style by scientists. I guess he's on a heavy diet of duct tape and painkillers to keep himself together for this game. So Ryoho wakes up and Stun leaves to continue his miserable existence. Meanwhile, in a different continuity, Mana senses that someone is nearby, and after a threat from Ryoho, Jenny descends from the heavens.
Oh, lady, why are you here?
Old lady? I'm not that old.
Mana never said you were old. Is this another botched reading?
It appears that the nine-tailed fox was here with the water god.
Water god? Are you talking about the dragon that hasn't shown up at all yet?
You're another fool who has come to steal the power of Nine Tails.
I'm Nine Tails.
And Jenny instantly believes this despite knowing it was just a folk story. Ryoho's seal comes loose, the dragon empties its own beast gauge, and...
Hard to believe that both a water god and a dragon existed here.
Wait, they're two different things? I thought they were the same thing, like the various dragons in Japanese mythology that rule the sea.
And what are you supposed to be?
You already know! She's a one-tailed fox! After Mana's monologue, she asks Jenny not to mention the dragon to anyone.
Now that the truth has come out, I have to report this, of course. I have a rock from the mountain temple that was protected by a strange parent and his child. I investigated it urgently, and, well, that's about all there was.
Thank you! Jenny.
How does she know Jenny's name? Well, no time for that, because in an alternate universe, Mana just led Long to Ryoho, and here Ryoho is fully aware of the seal placed on him. In so many words, she tells Long to beat up Ryoho, and he agrees to do it, and this is not how you spell it's! God damn it, even in 2003 people couldn't get this shit right. Why is Mana helping Ryoho in this fight when she wants Long to kick his ass so she can redo the seal? Well, whatever, one suicidal dragon later...
It's been a long time since I've been that scared. If the seal looks like it will break again, call me.
And he can be reached at, oh right, he's a hermit and is really hard to get in touch with.
I'm concerned about the other zoanthropes and dragons.
Hold on, what other dragons? Where the hell is Long going? He's going to walk off the side of the stage! Shenlong arrives at the temple and is immediately confronted by Ryoho and Mana.
Eh? Who are you? Oh yeah?
Did Shenlong just have a mood swing in the middle of that scene?
Eh? Who are you? Oh yeah?
Apparently Mana asked Shenlong to come and help with Ryoho. And I'm talking about the resealing and not the clipping issue he's having with the back of his neck. And in this continuity, Ryoho doesn't know about the seal on him. Shenlong beats him up, assuming Ryoho is another zoanthrope attacking him like the fortune teller said, and apparently thinks the fortune teller tricked him into coming out here for nothing.
That fortune teller! How could he trick me? Me! When I find him!
Seal breaks, dragon appears, run around, wait for it to beat itself, and oh hey, Ryoho's laying on nothing! Then this happens.
Thanks to you, the dragon has been resealed.
Hello?
Is that a Japanese thing? Greeting someone after beating up their friends? Because I haven't learned anything like that yet.
So, as a result of that power, everyone except great zoanthropes like me became violent?
Okay, I've gotta ask. Of all the zoanthropes out there, not only does the guy who starts every fight by saying, "I'll kill you," not succumb to his seemingly ever-present violent tendencies, but Mana sees this guy and thinks, yeah, I'll have him beat Ryoho to within an inch of his life so I can fix the seal.
And about the fortune teller...
How does she know about that? Or did that happen off-screen too?
He was trying to get me to come here.
The fortune teller just said get purified at a temple, Shenlong, not this specific one. Do you have any idea how many temples are in Japan? There had to be one nearby which you didn't need to beat up 8 random people to get to.
That was so you would deal with the people who were out of control. Maintaining the seal required all of my strength.
Mana flat out admits to manipulating Shenlong into literally fighting her battles for her, and he takes it shockingly well.
Ah, so it was to prevent the surrounding areas from being damaged.
prevent it from... Look around you, Shenlong! The temple is a mess! And the only reason the other areas weren't damaged is because everything had a goddamn force field around it!
You might suggest that because the force fields have the same symbol appear on them that Mana uses, that she was the one using the force fields to protect the surrounding areas. And I might suggest that she just said she was using all of her strength to keep the seal intact. So no, still no explanation for that.
And he just walks off. The one thing he does in this entire scene that sounds vaguely like something Shenlong would say is that he's going to go home and drink. Which, believe me, if I drank, I'd have been half in the bag 5 minutes into this video. Let's get to one of the new characters for a change of pace. Reiji arrives at the temple where he can sense the dragon's presence. Again with the wrong its! God, my English degree is howling in rage right now.
You defeated the unborn, so that thing has begun its long sleep again.
The unborn? You mean Xion? I fought him in the very first stage of arcade mode. No cutscenes, no build-up, he just appeared and I beat him. And keep in mind, outside of the characters attached to cutscenes, the opponents are random. You can reach this cutscene having never fought Xion or Nagi, and this statement won't make any sense. Anyway, Reiji knows Mana is full of shit because in Bloody Roar 4, apparently damn near everyone can just sense that it's nearby.
Well, why don't you try me again, little girl?
What the hell does that mean? You know what? I don't want to know. Just send in the dragon so I can watch it beat itself and wonder what I'm doing with my life.
A dragon and the unborn? I would have expected more.
Stop. First off, why is Ryoho in dragon form? We just knocked him out of dragon form. Second, why did Reiji bring up the unborn? Even if you do fight Xion or Nagi or both of them in arcade mode, it makes no sense for him to just blurt out the unborn after this fight.
So my entire life has been controlled for this?
Controlled for what? Even if we assume Reiji's clan was somehow tied to this temple, and Ryoho specifically, can we really assume that they're protecting the dragon or even helping keep it sealed? Because if that was the case, why wouldn't Ryoho and Mana seek them out first to help with the seal? Oh, and Ryoho's dead apparently, which means... I don't know. The earthquake seemed to stop, and by all accounts Reiji was violent before the riot started, and the world isn't in ruin or anything. Are we sure this isn't a good ending?
I'm just a beginner!
I don't have my certification yet in Dragon CPR.
Loud-mouthed.
Reiji is confronted by 3 other crow people, presumably from the Yaragarasu, and Reiji decides to cowboy up and try to kill them as well. And scene.
I'll give him this much, Reiji is a consistent character. Granted, it's because he's completely one-dimensional, but damn it, he's consistent!
Alice gets confronted by Ryoho and Mana right at the start instead of at the end of arcade mode.
Hey, you! What do you think you're doing? You'd better start explaining!
Is this how she always reacts to getting jumped in a back alley by priests? Ryoho's seal threatens to come undone, but he manages to hold it back. Mana tells Alice she wants her to beat up someone at the temple written on... something we can't see.
It's related to the incident that you're investigating.
She wasn't investigating, she was treating victims of the earthquakes.
I don't understand at all!
Can't help you, Alice. I barely get it myself. And then they just vanish. How? They don't have any kind of teleportation moves like Koryu or Bakuryu, so how did they do that? And I guess the location of the temple is on that random scrap of paper we see floating around, even though we never saw Mana or Ryoho with it, and this is a back alley, so it could just be an old dirty newspaper. So Alice, despite knowing where the temple is now, still goes through an unrelated temple, the rooftop, the prison, the freezing space. What kind of ass-backwards path are you taking to this temple, Alice? She does eventually get to the temple, and Ryoho immediately tells Mana to break the seal.
Yes!
Wait, he was just standing less than a second ago. Why is he on the ground doubled over before Mana even breaks the seal? It's like they're reusing motion captures between characters or something.
I know it's sudden, but please!
Whatever, I didn't even need to go into beast form to beat the dragon this time. That's more so a just-in-case thing I do out of habit.
Ooh! Scared me.
Alice reacts to a dragon the same way she reacts to someone jumping out at her and saying, "Boo!"
What in the world do you have me fighting What is...
Wow, damn, Alice can't even have a complete thought after that strenuous one-sided 14-second fight. After Mana's monologue,
It was the after effects of that strength that caused the problems with the zoanthropes.
Why can't most of the zoanthropes in this game pronounce the word zoanthrope?
This will stop the violence and the earthquakes.
Ah, yes!
And again, Alice gets cut off. And again, how is this going to stop the violence? You think everyone's just going to forgive and or forget that a bunch of zoanthropes went crazy and attacked everyone and anything within arm's reach?
It must be difficult for two people living in this kind of place.
Well, it is now, since breaking the seal kind of destroyed everything.
Now that I know what kind of dangerous being exists in this area, and since this is under WOC jurisdiction...
Since when? Alice is only a volunteer with the WOC. She has no authority to do that. And if it was under WOC jurisdiction, how come neither Yugo, the guy in charge of it, nor Bakuryu, the guy working right under Yugo, mentioned anything about this?
Would you like me to bring you some cake next time?
This is somehow more anime than the anime cutscenes from the last game. Speaking of, here's what Hey, we actually see Mana leading someone to the shrine instead of just having them show up.
So you finally come back.
What the? Did Oriko's next line start playing before it was supposed to? Yes. Yes, it did.
Mana, is this girl okay?
Meow, 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 meow!
Let me translate for you, Ryoho. Meow 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 stands for no, she's not okay for this. You know, as much as I hate most of the new characters, Uriko is my least favorite character in this game. Somehow she's managed to become even dumber, to the point that I wonder how she manages to dress herself without at least two people helping her. And of course, Ryoho attacks, to which she responds...
Wait! Pakupon! Wow!
Aside from the subtitle being completely wrong, Pakupon is the name she gave to Mana while she was in beast form. It's a dog's name, whatever.
Mana! Break the seal!
Yes! Wait! Don't just leave me here! Oh!
The hell are you talking about? No one's Fuck it, skip ahead.
I don't understand any of this! What's going on? Pakupon can become a girl, and the priest can become a dragon!
You'd think the zoanthrope wouldn't be that surprised to see, you know, zoanthropes.
You came all the way here, in your beast form.
Best form? Best form? I apologize if it seems like I'm being picky, but this isn't a massive, lengthy, dialogue-heavy game where a typo here and there can be forgiven. It's a fighting game. The dialogue for the whole game could fit in a children's book, and there are mistakes everywhere.
I don't know how I managed to get this far without knowing that!
Except knowing that would have no bearing on your winning any of the previous fights.
I guess the only thing I regret is that I can't keep Pakupon!
This will apply again about 10 seconds from now, but what is Uriko doing?
Oh no! It's almost dinner time! Well, I'm going home now. Mana, can I come and play with you sometime?
Uriko, do you talk to anyone around your age except Kenji?
Just one more thing. Pakupon is a fox. Ah! What?
How is that a stunning revelation? And actually, better question. How is this dumbass still smart enough to remember to breathe? Oh, and good luck not hearing this in your nightmares. Yugo is in a back alley for some reason, and he runs into Reiji.
You're supposed to be strong. Oh, that's right. You're famous. But now, you're in my way.
As it turns out, Reiji is the Black Shadow he was looking for.
Then what is Nagi?
One loading screen later, he finds Nagi on a casual stroll, apparently into the side of that barrier.
Eh? I feel something from you.
Someone get this man an Academy Award now. So much like Shina, we're supposed to infer Nagi's an out-of-control zoanthrope from that cutscene where she was just standing around and not talking. By Bloody Roar 4's definition, these guys are out of control. And then he just leaves her without a word so we can fight Xian at the aquarium.
Xian. No. The unborn?
Was that a question? Because you know he's the Unborn. You've known that since Bloody Roar 3.
What did you do to Nagi?
Again, you already know about Xion almost killing her. And her being aggressive isn't because of the Unborn, but because the dragon seal on Ryoho is weakening. Now, are you going to explain how exactly you know Nagi, or you're not? Okay. And once again, we get nothing after this fight. Why'd they have a cutscene afterward for Reiji, but not for either of these two, since they're apparently a lot closer to Yugo from a plot standpoint? Whatever, on to the shrine, which Yugo went to because...
I've got something I want to ask you, old man.
This particular line reminds me of what happens when I record narration, forget something I wanted to say, record it later, and then try and plug it back in the middle of a sentence and hope nobody notices.
I've got something I want to ask you, old man. What's the connection with the Unborn?
Connection to what? The riots and earthquakes? What makes you think they'd know that? So Mana lets slip that they do know something, and Ryoho tells Yugo to mind his own damn business. One ass-kicking later...
Hey, old man! Why don't you teach me?
What the hell is that supposed to mean? Seal breaks, dragon comes out, beast drives, no health, you get it by now. And again Ryoho's in dragon form despite being knocked out of it moments ago.
It's exactly as you said. The zoanthrope violence and the earthquakes were because the dragon's power was too strong.
Hold on, when did Yugo ever say that? All he did was ask about the Unborn, which, by the way, plays no role in this ending.
What's the connection with the Unborn?
Oh, hi, copy-pasted dialogue.
What's the connection with the Unborn?
The dragon was made by the life force of this planet itself.
Whoa, Mana just disappeared! I guess that is one of her abilities after all. Wrong it's again! And ride! Ride the planet of useless life. Did nobody with a firm grasp of English proofread this?
Its purpose was to rid this planet of useless life and life that damaged the planet.
So according to Mana and this picture, dinosaurs were either useless or threatening the planet, and so the Earth sent a dragon to murder all of them. And how did it do that if the dragon needs a vessel? Humans and dinosaurs didn't exist at the same time, so did one lucky dinosaur win the Gaia lottery and become a dragon vessel, killing all the other dinosaurs and then just dying alone?
The Unborn was held back by the dragon a long time ago, right?
1, how does Yugo know that? And 2, that's not possible because the Unborn's power was sealed by the tabula, as was said in 3, in times now forgotten. Unless you're saying Gaia made the tabula, in which case I'd ask, why bother making the dragon? And you know what? By Mana's own account, the dragon is causing a bunch of problems and damaging the planet and the people on it, so why doesn't Gaia send something to kill the dragon? I'm pretty sure I've brought this up before, but holy shit, Gaia is stupid!
But why is Nagi loyal to the Unborn?
That girl, Nagi, her power was given to her just so she could defeat the Unborn that had been brought back to life a year ago.
No, the Unborn was never killed, just sealed by the tabula, because remember, the Unborn is not just one guy. It's several beings with a collective conscience, sort of like a Legion for We Are Many type of being. And we never found out Xion's origin, so we don't know how long he's had an Unborn form.
The power was a copy of the Unborn's power, but some of its spirit was also copied.
I see. Her body was taken over.
Bullshit. We'll see it later, but the Unborn doesn't and can't control Nagi except under very specific circumstances, which don't happen in Yugo's playthrough. Yugo goes on about how good he was to beat a dragon, but Mana says the seal... What? It wasn't completely broken? He turned into a goddamn dragon! What, would having the seal completely break make it not lose health every time it did a beast drive? Yugo teases Mana about wanting to fight a full-strength dragon when Ryoho wakes up. Or he just goes fuh. Either way, that's the end. As for Nagi, she finds Xion on a rooftop, and he doesn't recognize her. She jogs his memory, and he says he didn't think she was a zoanthrope, which, technically, he's right.
Thanks to you. After that, I morphed from my original body!
What? Is this energy Gaia?
So you kick his ass, and are you kidding me with this victory pose? Just slap a Brazzers logo on it and call it a day. Xion realizes Gaia copied his powers to try and get back at him, and Nagi tells him to return her to her original body. So, Nagi's not in her original body? I guess that explains why we don't see a stab wound from Zeon, but whose body is that? And if she's in a different body, how the hell does Yugo recognize her? Zeon calls her on her stupidity while mocking her with his nonsensical mouth movements.
You don't seem to get it.
He starts to laugh and calls out Gaia for putting a part of the unborn in Nagi to make her the spurious form. Okay, I'll bite. If Gaia is powerful enough to create the unborn, does that mean that Gaia, created the unborn? Was it another thing Gaia made to destroy useless or dangerous life ages ago, which, like the dragon now, horrifically backfired on her? And isn't fighting the hive mind that is the unborn with the unborn kind of like trying to put out a fire by throwing napalm on it? Anyway, Zeon spazzes around a bit while rambling about how she's just a copy and he's the real deal, which Nagi responds to calmly and rationally by stabbing him to death.
And since Zeon was under the possession of the unborn, it moves to the next best host, which is Nagi. By the way, quick question. If Zeon's not under the influence of the unborn, does he still have the unborn beast form? I mean, he had a crest in 3, so he is a zoanthrope, but if he's not influenced by... This game's dumb. I don't want to try rationalizing this shit anymore. Let's just move on.
She ends up at the temple where Mana immediately points out that Nagi's being controlled by the unborn, which manifests as a black fart cloud around her. How come it never did that with Zeon?
You! Bring out the one who's caused us so much...
Nagi, you gonna finish that thought?
grief!
There you go. Hey, check out what you can do with one of Nagi's beast drives after knocking out an opponent.
This will be exciting.
Oh god, how inappropriate could that be? She threatens Mana to reveal where the dragon is, but Ryoho's seal comes loose, and you know where this is going. Nagi, or rather the unborn controlling her, claims they'll have revenge with this one's strike, but right as she's about to stab Ryoho...
Nagi!
This scene is amazing! It's not just because Yugo's voice gets cut off almost immediately, but because Yugo's like an in-game representation of my feelings toward this character, coming out of nowhere and clocking Nagi right in the jaw.
What?
Yeah, this shit is the unborn, everyone. A black cloud with a generic Halloween spooky face on it. You know what this is? This is someone taking the first generation ghost-type Pokemon, mashing them all together, and calling it the Unborn. Mana freezes it in place because she can do that, I guess, and Nagi slashes at it, which somehow causes it to disappear, and she collapses. She wakes up with Yugo saying something that wasn't translated properly, and... fuck this game. Nagi doesn't remember anything after fighting Zeon, and Yugo says something rather ironic.
Well, I'm not very good at talking.
At which point Mana takes over and delivers a completely different spiel than almost everyone else and contradicts what exactly the dragon does.
This dragon, whose purpose is to protect this world from evil beings, was the cause of all this, but...
We just went through a dozen cutscenes where you told us that the dragon was around to play natural selection with useless and earth-endangering life, but now it's just the evil things it worries about, and it doesn't kill them, it just protects the world from them. I would tell Mana to kiss my ass, except, as we've already seen, she's a biter.
Mana says Nagi defeated the Unborn, which isn't true because there's still the tabula floating around somewhere, but Nagi can't go back to her original body, which I guess makes her the poor man's zoanthrope version of Psylocke. Also, take a listen to this.
Thanks to you, the Unborn has been defeated. And the dragon has been sealed again.
This cutscene is so goddamn long that the music fades out and the rest of it is just background noise. And she takes this news shockingly well, considering that was the whole reason she tracked down Xion in the first place. Accipit? Accipit? That's not even a word! Nagi toys with Yugo after remembering he punched her in the face, even though she was still being controlled at that point. And get ready for some of the worst fake snoring you've ever heard. And everyone laughs the end. As for Xion, Nagi confronts him on the rooftops and, like before, he ignores her until she goes into beast form. A little pissed off that an imitation was sent after him, he fights Nagi, wins, and grinds his boot into Nagi's forehead for good measure. He lets her live, and when Nagi asks why, he just says,
"Good question. Why, indeed?"
Which is supposed to be foreshadowing, but by this point I just thought he was acting out of character, like most other established characters in this game. He gets to the shrine and Mana tries the old "it's not here" trick again, and it works about as well as it did last time. I know I mentioned the lip flaps are off because of the language switch, but this looks bad no matter what language it's in. He's laughing the same way a ventriloquist dummy would.
"I feel Gaia's unlucky energy coming from you." Well then, show me your true self.
Yep, Xion can disrupt the seal on Ryoho because he just can.
Don't fool with me, kid!
Aw, you are fine just as you are now.
The fuck are you talking about? Whatever, she's getting what's coming to her in the next cutscene when the seal breaks loose.
Bloody Roar 4. It's one of those few instances where you can say, I'm glad that 9-year-old girl got punched across the room, and not feel like an asshole about it.
For those of us who suffer eternally, I will bring the light here and now!
Not sure what that means, since the Unborn is typically about darkness, not light, but either way the dragon is still its own worst enemy. Somehow Ryoho's conscious and in dragon form still, and Xion's dramatics get cut off by the weird pacing of the dialogue.
With this, we finally get a blow in on Gaia, who is long took advantage of us.
Mana comes to as Xion's about to deliver the final blow and locks him in place.
How do you like it? You can't get free, right?
Why are her eyes not looking at Xion or Ryoho? It turns out Xion doesn't have to get free because Nagi, under the influence of the Unborn somehow, I say somehow because before Xion had to die and have his black fart cloud possess Nagi for her to be under its influence, stabs Dragon Ryoho through the neck and kills him. Mana just lets Xion go before going into fox form and barking, which somehow releases the Unborn from both Xion and Nagi. If Mana could do this the entire time, why the fuck didn't she do it the moment Xion walked into the shrine? Xion, who's still in his Unborn beast form without the Unborn's influence, and the same can be said for Nagi as well, both turn on the Unborn and destroy it in one shot. Getting rid of the Unborn in Bloody Roar 4 takes roughly the same amount of effort as swatting a mosquito. Meanwhile, Mana mourns the loss of Ryoho and fade to black. And I think this goes without saying at this point, but I'd much rather have this fox than this fox.
And now, finally, let's see how Ryoho and Mana deal with Ryoho and Mana.
While apparently just wandering around Japan, they come across Reiji.
You're like my old man. You won't die.
Except your dad did die. You killed him and ran out on the clan, remember? Ryoho is apparently after the Black Shadow because he mentions that it wasn't the white zoanthrope behind it. Whatever it is. Also, Mana is nowhere to be seen in this cutscene. Not that I'm complaining, but where did she go? They end up at another temple and find Why is he in his palette swap costume? Most of this is a copy-paste of Xion's first cutscene with Ryoho and Mana. So he tries breaking the seal, Ryoho shrugs it off, they kick his ass, and Xion does this. I may have sped up the footage a bit, but how could I not? He's not dead, but Mana says the evil in him is dissipated, even though we never saw the Unborn leave his body like every other time. But they're not done yet because they have to face the Worshipper of Nine Tails. And if it's not the dragon, then we never see the Worshipper of Nine Tails. Also, Xian's apparently gone despite him being unconscious on the floor next to them 10 seconds ago. They get back to the shrine, which Ryoho apparently doesn't recognize based on his reaction.
Is this the place?
And Mana thinks because they beat the Unborn, whom the dragon was designed to fight aside from, everything else it was made for, and Mana thinks they're in the clear only for the seal on Ryoho to start coming loose again.
Ryoho, no! Don't give him your body!
Give who his body, the dragon or the Unborn? Oh, okay, it's the dragon.
Here it comes. This is what pissed me off the most about Ryoho and Mana.
As he becomes a dragon, Ryoho ends up facing the dragon in his mind. Mana explains the dragon was kept inside him as a last resort, and she'll help him in this fight, just like every other fight to this point.
I don't understand.
The feeling is mutual, Ryoho. It's the same fight as always, just with a different arena, so same strategy applies. Ryoho comes to in human form, and Mana tells him the dragon's been resealed. Yup! Ryoho and Mana just resealed the dragon all by themselves.
Yes, that really added something to the story, didn't it? So let me just remind you of what this terribly complicated story was all about.
That long-winded speech Mana kept giving in the other endings about needing a strong zoanthrope to help with the resealing process, that was a load of shit. But every character in the game still needed to focus on these two in the last couple of fights and in the endings because I'm important. Just think for a moment what the cutscenes could have been like if not everything was focused on these two assholes. It would still suck because of the script translation and the acting, but we might see characters that love or hate each other interacting more than the meaningless one-offs with Gato and Shina or Koryu and Bakuryu. Mana goes on to say that the dragon awoke in Ryoho a year ago when the temple was attacked. So not only does Ryoho know this temple despite acting like he didn't recognize it earlier, and don't give me the memory loss excuse because he clearly knew this place in every other ending, but the dragon was inside of him since before that attack.
And when the Guardians were keeping the dragon down...
Stop! See that bird guy? I was right. The Yatagarasu did help with the dragon seal, and Mana is a little shit for not asking them for help instead of plucking strangers off the street. Mana explains her sister had to try sealing the dragon because she wasn't strong enough at the time. Ryoho is understandably a bit confused, and was the connection? I don't care anymore, we're almost done.
The dragon was made by the life force of this planet itself.
Oh fucking hell, it's the same speech as before! No, we're skipping this shit! Mana questions why the Unborn disappearing didn't calm down the dragon. To which I would point out that that's not the only function of the dragon according to, Mana. And Ryoho chimes in right away.
The ones that will destroy the planet are probably we humans.
And that's it. The dragon exists because humans will threaten the planet. Not zoanthropes, mind you. Humans. Sell off your fossil fuel cars, start shopping at Whole Foods, and hug some trees, folks, or the planet will send a dragon to murder your ungrateful ass.
Oh my god. We did it. We're done. I don't have to play this game anymore!
So, we already know that critically the game got mostly mixed reviews at best. But how did Bloody Roar 4 end up doing commercially? Not good. To give you an idea of how bad it did, here are the rough global sales figures for every Bloody Roar game prior to this. Do you have a rough guesstimate of how it did in your head yet? Bloody Roar 4 sold about 90,000 units worldwide. Impressively bad considering it's on the series' quote-unquote home console, and that's less than half of what the non-PS2 Extreme did. In a cruel twist of fate though, because the game sold so poorly, it's become slightly rare. It's hard to find anyone selling a complete copy of the game for less than $20 to $25. As for Hudson, in 2005, Konami became their parent company, in addition to their majority shareholder. They continued onward and upward with such future titles as the Mario Party series, a crappy Wii Sports knockoff called Deca Sports, which also got a crappy Kinect follow-up called Deca Sports Freedom, a crappy survival horror game revolving around cell phones named Calling, and the infamously bad Bomberman Act Zero. It wasn't all bad though. I mean, they did put out Lost in Shadow, a puzzle platformer which was actually alright. By January of 2011, Konami fully acquired Hudson for the purpose of working on social and mobile games. The very next month, Hudson Entertainment, the US branch of Hudson, shut down. Former Hudson Entertainment brand manager and web producer, Morgan Harrow, would post a lengthy blog about the closure, during which he said the following: "A special note goes to the fans demanding a return of the Bloody Roar series. It was something I personally pushed for in the company, despite the crowded fighting game market. With digital distribution channels like Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network, I felt there was a chance, if done right, to reinvigorate the series. There were some game design documents sent around internally of some spin-offs of the series, but it didn't seem like it was the right direction. There was a chance for something to happen late 2011, early 2012, but clearly we won't see what was to be. To the Bloody Roar fans out there, I read every single one of your messages, petitions, and calls for the series to be brought back. You guys are awesome, and perhaps someday a developer and a publisher will pick it up and do it justice. Until then, just know, you guys rock." And as a side note, Mr. Harrow is now a senior project manager for the Sony PlayStation web team. Good for him. In May of 2011, Hudson Soft executive and human turbo controller Takahashi Meijin, who was the basis for Master Higgins in Adventure Island, left the company without explanation. Perhaps he saw the writing on the wall, because less than a year later, Hudson Soft merged into Konami and ceased to exist on March 1st, 2012. Hudson's branding still shows up beyond that, but it's all part of Konami Digital Entertainment, and as far as I know, they still hold the rights to Hudson's franchises, including Bloody Roar. As for Bloody Roar, the only thing beyond 4 worth mentioning is Yugo showing up in a not Smash Bros. Title called DreamMix TV World Fighters. So if you ever wanted to see Yugo fight Optimus Prime and Simon Belmont, go ahead and import that. It briefly came back into the limelight when an imposter on Twitter posed as the account for Hudson Soft in 2011 and announced a new entry in the series was on the way.
But that was 4 years ago, and it's been over a decade since the last Bloody Roar game. So where does the series stand? That's it! I'm calling the cops after I give that guy a piece of my mind.
Hey, I'm giving you 10 seconds to get... Huh? Whoa! I already told you, my neighbors a couple hours south of me have it.
Do you really think I'm that stupid?
Do I answer honestly?
Did you think you were being clever? I can feel the tabula's presence in your home.
Then why did it take you so long to knock a third time?
Enough. Either surrender the tabula to me or die. Copying someone else's strengths in order to destroy me. You clearly put a lot of thought into that.
Thanks.
What?
Did you honestly think you knocked me out? You can't even make a fist, for God's sake.
Fool, I'll end your miserable life here and now!
Cram it, drama queen. Come and get me.
You imbecile!
What? Enough of this!
So, all of this is for the tabula, huh?
You think you've won? This fight has barely begun.
You want it? It's yours, my friend. Now get off my lawn.
So as I was saying, where does the series stand now?
A couple years ago, rumors circulated about Bloody Roar possibly being brought back as a PS4 exclusive title to compete with then Xbox One exclusive Killer Instinct. Of course, since then Street Fighter V became a PS4 console exclusive, so that idea's out the window. Still, the idea did catch on and lead to some interesting speculation among fans and observers.
So, there was this recent, rumor drop that Aiding was not available to help Capcom with the development of future fighting games or updates to Ultimate Marvel 3 or anything like that, because they're working on other projects. And the big cross-fingered hope is that that other freaking project is like Bloody Roar 5, is the eventual update to Bloody Roar that we've been waiting for so freaking long.
The fact that they registered a new domain for Bloody Roar shows some interesting possibilities and some interesting support for a new next generation title. There's someone from Hudson that works at Sony right now, and Hudson was the developers of what game? Bloody Roar. I'm hyped right now, so because of the possibility of this being a reality.
Interest in the series persisted enough that the first two Bloody Roar games were released on the PlayStation Network. though those versions have a tendency to slow down, so you're better off getting a physical copy if you can. Just from my experience, there's an active fan group on DeviantArt called The Beast Legacy, and a Facebook group called Bloody Roar Colombia. In fact, Central and South American players have done a lot to keep Bloody Roar going, with tournaments for Bloody Roar games being held as recently as this year.
As for what the future holds, who knows? It's easy to say the series is dead and buried, but we've seen other fighting games make comebacks. Mortal Kombat saw a resurgence with the 2011 reboot. It took 11 years to go from Marvel vs. Capcom 2 to Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and Killer Instinct returned after a 17-year gap between KI Gold and the 2013 release. I do hope to see the day that I can add a Bloody Roar 5 or reboot or whatever to this video series. But until then...
I'm sorry. That's your fun. Yeah, that was. This hair, I just kind of put my hand up, and I had no idea what your fist was. And ooh. I didn't know you were gonna do it that quick. Sorry. Yeah. A friend of mine actually, like, purposely did a right hook on me in one of our shots, and he was like, "Oh, you can take it." So I was like, "Oh, okay." Next shot, bam. It's like, "You can take it, right?" But yeah.
Okay.
I'm ready to be able to make a fist again eventually.
Can't wait for the comments on this. There's no tap out victories in Bloody Roar. Yeah, I think you got her.
Okay, she's coming back. Good. Okay. Are we recording?
I think so.
Okay.
Zion finally has it now and doesn't know what to say.
I waited so long. You must get everything, Kevin. Thank you.